Hi everybody, my name is Jeremy Siskind. I'm the author of Playing Solo Jazz Piano and Jazz Piano Fundamentals. And I'm not the author, I'm the composer, pianist, producer of a CD called Songs of Rebirth, which came out about 3 weeks ago. Today, I'm not just here to shamelessly promote products. I want to tell you about the ALT chord, or the alt chord. This is one of the more confusing chords for a lot of younger musicians and a lot of older musicians too. And it is very different than a lot of other chord symbols. And there's this thing that I say that if you've taken a class or lessons from me, I often say this: chord symbols give you information, not instructions. Oftentimes, chord symbols seem like they're giving you instructions, right? When it says G7 flat 9, the instruction is kind of like G7 but flat the ninth, and that's what you're supposed to do. But chord symbols are more complicated than this, and real musicians know it. We know that we're taking them into consideration and then always making our own decisions about which notes to exclude and include. And so that's going to really come into focus, I hope, as we talk about the alt chord and the scale associated with that chord. So let's get moving here. Okay, so I'm talking about a chord you might have seen that's usually notated like this: G7 ALT. There may or may not be a period at the end there. Maybe there's usually not. Or D flat 7 ALT. Maybe occasionally people are writing the ALT before the 7, but that would be kind of strange to me. Usually I think it's more like those first two. And I'm going to tell you what the chord means, and then I'm going to tell you why. So when you see a G7 alt or a D flat 7 alt, it means that the chord cannot contain a natural 5, a natural 9, or a natural 13th. Okay, so you must exclude those notes which we would frequently play on a dominant 7th chord. And instead, it can contain, and notice I'm not saying should, because there's a lot of potential notes: your flat 5 or sharp 11, your sharp 5 or flat 13, your flat 9 and sharp 9. Frequently, this alt chord is going to involve more than one of these altered tones. Usually you might play a sharp 9 and a flat 9, a sharp 11 and a sharp 9. And so these altered chords are usually going to sound really colorful. So this is essentially how you want to make the chord. You want to have a dominant 7th chord. Make sure that you don't include the natural 5th, 9th, or 13th. And you can, and you're encouraged to include as many of those altered tones as you want. All right, now, why? What's the deal with this chord? And this chord, more than most chords, is highly associated with a scale, which would be called the altered scale. And now, for reasons which I'll explain later, assuming I remember, this goes by other names. It's also called the super locrian, which sounds very, very fancy. Or I also hear it called the diminished whole tone. I'll show you the notes of the scale, and then I'll tell you how we arrive there. So if I'm thinking about G altered scale, it would look like this: G, A flat, B flat. Technically, it's a C flat. Back to that later. D flat, E flat, and F. So this scale, and I'm going to give you the notes. I'll tell you the chord tone. It contains the root, the flat 9, the sharp 9. This is a weird enharmonic third, right? This is like the normal third of G7 or G major, but it's spelled as a C flat instead of a B, and it's in the 4th scale position, so super strange. This note is the flat 5 or sharp 11. This note is the sharp 5 or flat 13, and then this note is the dominant 7th. So with this scale, we have, our root third and 7th of a dominant 7th chord, plus all 4 of our potential altered tones. Okay, I'm going to make the keyboard bigger, and I'll show you if I'm going to just play around with the scale. I'll play it up and down first. Such a strange scale. And then, yeah, improvising, you're going to get a ton of color because you've got all of these altered tones in here. All right, so then where does this scale come from? Before we get into it, let's talk about the melodic minor scale, because that's going to be key. So in jazz, when we talk about the melodic minor scale, we're talking about a scale, and I'll stay in the key of, I'll go to the key of C. A scale that's just like the major scale, but with a lowered third. And I know if you're very familiar with classical music, you have probably learned a version of that melodic minor scale that has an ascending form and then a different descending form, right? That's embarrassing. I messed up that left hand a little bit. But in jazz, we're only really interested in one set of notes. So we're interested in the ascending form. So this would be C melodic minor. It's just like the major scale, but with a flat 3. Super important scale in jazz. We use this as well as we'll soon discover, the modes of that scale. Just to give you another example, if I want D melodic minor scale, then I would start with the D major scale. So don't forget that you have to add sharps or flats to create that major scale. And then instead of an F sharp, I'm gonna make it an F natural. So we get D, E, F, G, A, B, C sharp, only one sharp. Now, I'm gonna say something a little bit complicated. This altered scale is the 7th mode of the melodic minor scale. So by that, what we mean is you start this melodic minor scale on the 7th note. So I'm going to put a B as the first note here. And now we've got this is going to be the B altered scale. And you can check, it has the root, it has the flat 9 and the sharp 9. Then it's got the major third. It's got the flat 5 or sharp 11 and the sharp 5 or flat 13th. And then it's got the dominant 7th. So that's going to be B altered. Same thing on this D melodic minor. If we put the C sharp as the first note, now we have C sharp altered. So the formula, if you want to find G altered, is you're going to go up a half step and use that melodic minor scale. So for G altered, we would be using the A flat melodic minor scale. For C altered, we'd be using the D flat melodic minor scale. For E altered, we'd be using the F melodic minor scale. Let's just check for the G altered. I'm going to do a little bit of erasing. I know this is super fun to watch on YouTube. Wow, getting so many views, so many likes. The crowd is going wild because they get to watch somebody erase because he's too lazy to edit his videos. I want you to see the real thing. So remember, we're going to start with an A flat major scale. And then if we lower the third, we get A flat melodic minor. And then if we start with G, and we end with G, now we have the G altered scale. You can see that it's the same as the scale above. Okay, I want to explain these names, and then we're going to get back to the alt chord. All right, so these names, super locrian. I can tell you with absolute confidence that locrian is referring to the seventh mode, right? The locrian mode of the major scale is the major scale starting on the seventh degree. So locrian means that we're starting from the seventh scale degree. The super part, I think it's BS. I think some fancy jazz musician wanted to sound fancy. Super usually means that something's above, not below. And in this case, I have no idea what that refers to here. So the super locrian, that's, somebody explain that to me, the super part. The locrian, it's because it's the seventh mode. Now the diminished whole tone is really interesting. And that refers to the first half of this scale alternates half steps and whole steps, right? G to A flat is a half step. A flat to B flat is a whole step. B flat to C flat, half step. C flat to D flat, whole step. And so that's very much like what we call the diminished, or I sometimes call it the octatonic scale. So that first half is like diminished. And then starting on this D flat, everything is whole steps. D flat to E flat to F, F to G. Actually, you know, we could go further. Starting on this C flat, everything is whole steps. So it sounds like what we call the whole tone scale, right? A scale made up of all whole tones. So this is like this hybrid scale, which is first half diminished or octatonic, alternating half steps and whole steps. Second half, only whole steps. Listen one more time. Here's the diminished half. Here's the whole tone half. I'm trying to think what that animal is that's like half lion, half dragon or something. Is it like a... I don't know. Okay. Cool. So that's your altered scale. And so notice that this scale does not include, and this is going to sound familiar if you've been paying attention, it does not include the natural 5, right? There's no D natural. It does not include the natural 9. There's no A natural. It does not include the natural 13. There's no E natural, right? But it does include, as we've well established now, all 4 of your altered tones, the flat 5 or sharp 11, the sharp 5 or flat 13, the flat 9, and the sharp 9. So you don't have to play all 4 of those altered tones. Of course, you know, if you're doing 4-note voicings, you're not under obligation to all of a sudden go to, you know, a 6-note voicing where you're able to include all those altered tones. You are welcome to include 1, 2, or even none of those altered tones. You know, maybe you're only going to play the 3rd and 7th. But what you can't do is include any of the natural tones. So let me give you some sample voicings that you might use. So I'm going to play the root down here. If you're playing with a bassist, you're probably not going to play that root. But you could play the 3rd and the 7th in the left hand, F and B for a G7. And then you could play the flat 13th and flat 9th in the right. E flat and A flat. That would be acceptable for a G altered. Or you could play E flat and B flat. The flat 13th and the sharp 9. Or you could play, let's see, let me think of a fun way to voice this. You could have a more closed voicing. The 7th, flat 9, 3rd, flat 13th. Here I have the 7th, the flat 9, the 3rd, the flat 13th, and the sharp 9. Well, let me do it like this. Here's a voicing which I think includes all of your alterations. So I have my 7th and my 3rd, F and B. And then I have my flat 9, my sharp 9. I know you can't really see that I'm playing that. And my flat 13. And then my flat 5 or sharp 11. Or how about this? This has my 7th, my 3rd, flat 13th, flat 9th, flat 5, and then root on top. Let's add one more. This has 7th, 3rd, flat 13, flat 9, flat 5, root, sharp 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different notes. That's all of the notes of the altered scale. Basically making a chord voicing out of that scale. Okay, I think that's it for today. Friendly reminder, if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and buy books. That's the best way to support me in this channel. Jazz Piano Fundamentals, playing solo jazz piano. And stay tuned, there's going to be a pretty cool performance video from one of the tracks of Songs of Rebirth coming out this weekend. So thanks for watching. I'll see y'all soon.